Have you ever noticed that the men who rush toward a woman are usually the ones who leave confused, rejected, or wondering what went wrong, while the men who seem calm, grounded, and completely comfortable in their own presence often create curiosity without trying? That difference has very little to do with looks, money, or clever pickup lines. It has everything to do with psychology. Most people believe the moment of attraction begins when the conversation starts, but that is a misunderstanding. Attraction often begins long before a single word is spoken. It begins in the way you carry your emotions, the way you manage uncertainty, and the silent signals your mind sends before your mouth ever opens. The greatest mistake is believing that approaching a woman is the first step. It isn't. The first step happens inside your own mind. If your thoughts are filled with fear, desperation, the need for validation, or the pressure to impress, those emotions quietly leak into your posture, your voice, your eye contact, and your behavior. Human beings are remarkably skilled at detecting emotional states, even when they cannot explain what they are sensing. That is why confidence is not something you perform, it is something people feel. Before you ever take that first step, there are 3 psychological rules that determine whether your presence creates comfort or tension, curiosity or resistance, respect or rejection. Ignore these rules and every conversation becomes an uphill battle. Understand them and you will realize that the real challenge was never approaching someone else, it was mastering yourself first. The second mistake many people make is believing that attraction can be manufactured through rehearsed words, memorized techniques, or perfectly timed compliments. In reality, people are far more influenced by emotional consistency than verbal perfection. Someone may forget the exact sentence you used, but they rarely forget how your presence made them feel. When your actions and emotions are aligned, you communicate certainty without saying it. When they are disconnected, every smile appears forced, every joke feels rehearsed, and every compliment sounds like an attempt to gain approval instead of expressing genuine appreciation. Confidence is not the absence of nervousness. It is the refusal to let nervousness control your behavior. The strongest impression is often created by the person who accepts uncertainty without allowing it to dictate every movement. That quiet acceptance creates a sense of emotional stability, and emotional stability is one of the most attractive qualities any human being can possess because it signals maturity, self-control, and inner security. Before you approach any woman, the first rule is surprisingly simple, yet almost nobody practices it. Never approach because you need something from her. Approach because you have something to offer. A respectful conversation, positive energy, genuine curiosity, or simply an authentic interaction. The difference between these 2 mindsets changes everything. Neediness silently asks, "Please make me feel valuable." Confidence quietly says, "I already value myself and I'm interested in getting to know you." One mindset places your emotional state in someone else's hands. The other keeps responsibility where it belongs, with you. People instinctively sense this difference because emotions are contagious. If you approach carrying anxiety, urgency, or fear of rejection, those emotions often spread into the interaction. If you approach carrying calmness, patience, and emotional balance, those feelings become contagious instead. This is why emotional regulation is not just a personal skill, it is a social advantage. The conversation begins long before words are exchanged because your emotional state introduces you before your voice ever does. Many men unknowingly walk towards someone with an invisible burden on their shoulders. They have already imagined rejection before saying hello. They have already decided that one response will determine their confidence, their self-worth, or even the direction of their entire day. That is an enormous amount of emotional pressure to place on a stranger who has done nothing more than exist in the same environment. Imagine meeting someone who instantly expects you to validate their confidence. You would probably feel uncomfortable without understanding why. The same principle works in reverse. When you free yourself from the need for a particular outcome, your body relaxes, your breathing slows, your expressions become natural, and your attention shifts away from yourself and toward the other person. Instead of constantly wondering, do I look confident? Am I saying the right thing? Does she like me? Your mind becomes curious about who she actually is. Curiosity replaces performance, and authenticity replaces calculation. Ironically, this is the moment conversations begin to feel effortless because they stop being performances and start becoming genuine human interactions. Psychologists often describe confidence as the ability to tolerate uncertainty without emotional collapse. That definition changes everything because it means confidence is not measured by how boldly you approach someone, it is measured by how peacefully you accept whatever happens afterward. If the conversation flows naturally, wonderful. If it ends after a few sentences, that is also part of life. Neither outcome changes your value as a person. This perspective removes the emotional weight from every interaction. Instead of chasing approval, you begin collecting experiences. Instead of fearing rejection, you begin developing resilience. Every conversation becomes practice in communication rather than a test of your worth. Ironically, the less you need immediate success, the more naturally success tends to appear because people are drawn toward those who are emotionally independent. Independence is attractive not because it creates distance, but because it creates freedom. It allows both people to interact without hidden expectations, manipulation, or pressure. And that freedom is where genuine connection has the greatest chance to grow. The second rule before you approach any woman is to master your body language before you ever think about your words. Most people spend hours wondering what sentence to say, yet almost nobody asks what their posture, facial expression, breathing, and movements are already communicating. Psychology tells us that people form impressions within seconds, and those impressions are rarely based on vocabulary alone. Before your introduction is heard, your nervous system has already introduced itself. If your shoulders are tense, your breathing is shallow, your eyes constantly search for approval, and your movements are rushed, you silently communicate uncertainty. On the other hand, when your posture is relaxed, your movements are deliberate, your eye contact is natural, and your expression reflects genuine ease rather than forced confidence, you communicate emotional security. Emotional security is attractive because it tells another person they are standing in front of someone who does not create unnecessary emotional chaos. This is why the strongest presence in any room is often the quietest one. Calmness speaks louder than performance, because calmness cannot be convincingly faked for long. It is the outward expression of an inward reality. Many people misunderstand confidence as dominance, but genuine confidence has very little interest in dominating anyone. It is not louder than everyone else, nor is it obsessed with proving intelligence, success, or importance. Real confidence removes the need to compete for attention because it already possesses something far more valuable: inner stability. Someone who constantly interrupts, exaggerates achievements, or tries to impress is often revealing hidden insecurity rather than genuine strength. Emotional intelligence teaches us that secure individuals do not chase validation because their identity is not built upon the reactions of strangers. Instead, they remain curious, respectful, and emotionally present. This presence changes the atmosphere of every conversation. Rather than making someone feel observed like an object to be won, it makes them feel seen as a human being. That distinction is enormous because people naturally relax around those who make them feel psychologically safe instead of psychologically evaluated. Psychologists often describe emotional intelligence as the ability to recognize, understand, and regulate emotions, both your own and those of others. Before approaching anyone, ask yourself a simple question: what emotional state am I carrying into this interaction? If the answer is fear, loneliness, frustration, desperation, or the need to prove something, those emotions will quietly influence your tone, your patience, and your decision-making. Emotional states are contagious. Just as one anxious person can raise the tension in an entire room, one emotionally grounded person can create calm without saying very much. This is why self-awareness is not merely a personal development skill, it is a relationship skill. The better you understand your own emotions, the less likely you are to project them onto someone else. Instead of assuming disinterest because someone appears quiet, you become patient enough to recognize that people have different personalities, different comfort levels, and different experiences that shape their behavior. Emotional intelligence replaces assumptions with observation, and observation almost always leads to better communication. There is another psychological principle that deserves attention. People are naturally drawn toward those who are fully engaged with the present moment. Anxiety constantly pulls attention into the future by asking, "What if this goes wrong?" Regret pulls attention into the past by whispering, "Remember the last rejection?" Confidence lives somewhere entirely different. It lives in the present. When you are fully present, you stop mentally rehearsing your next sentence while the other person is speaking. You actually listen. You notice subtle changes in facial expressions, tone of voice, energy, and body language. Active listening is one of the rarest forms of respect in modern communication because most people are preparing replies rather than absorbing information. Ironically, becoming a better listener often makes you a more interesting conversationalist because people enjoy being around those who genuinely understand them instead of those who are simply waiting for their turn to speak. The third rule before approaching any woman is to develop a life that feels meaningful even without the outcome of that conversation. This may sound unrelated, but it is perhaps the deepest psychological principle of all. Human beings are remarkably sensitive to emotional dependence. When your happiness, confidence, and purpose depend entirely on whether someone accepts or rejects you, every interaction becomes emotionally heavy. That pressure is difficult for anyone to carry. On the other hand, when your life already contains meaningful goals, healthy friendships, discipline, personal growth, physical health, and a clear sense of direction, conversations become lighter because they are no longer attempts to fill an emotional void. You are not searching for someone to complete your identity. You are inviting someone to share part of a life that is already moving forward. This mindset transforms relationships because it replaces attachment born from fear with connection built upon choice. The healthiest relationships are never formed by two incomplete people desperately trying to rescue one another. They are built by two emotionally responsible individuals who choose connection without abandoning their individuality. Self-development is often misunderstood as becoming more impressive. In reality, it is about becoming more authentic. Reading books, exercising, improving communication skills, developing discipline, learning emotional regulation, and building resilience are not strategies for attracting someone else. They are investments in becoming someone you yourself can respect. The fascinating part is that this inner work naturally changes the way others perceive you. Your posture becomes more relaxed because you no longer carry constant self-doubt. Your eye contact becomes steadier because you are no longer afraid of being seen. Your smile becomes genuine because it is no longer a performance designed to earn approval. Even your silence becomes comfortable because you understand that meaningful conversations do not require endless talking. The strongest presence in any interaction belongs to the person who is completely comfortable with who they are, regardless of the outcome. Ultimately, approaching someone is not a test of courage alone. It is a reflection of psychological preparation. Long before your feet begin moving, your mind has already decided whether you are approaching from confidence or from fear, from curiosity or from neediness, from emotional stability or emotional dependence. The words you choose matter, but they will never compensate for an unstable emotional foundation. Lasting confidence is built through self-awareness, emotional intelligence, disciplined self-development, and the quiet certainty that your value exists independently of anyone else's opinion. When those qualities become part of your character, you no longer chase approval. You simply create opportunities for authentic human connection. And that is where the most meaningful relationships begin. The greatest lesson is this: never make approaching a woman the goal. Make becoming the kind of person who naturally earns respect the goal. Attraction can open a door, but character is what keeps it open. Confidence that depends on someone else's approval disappears the moment you hear the word no. But confidence built through discipline, self-respect, emotional intelligence, and purpose remains unshaken regardless of the outcome. The strongest people are not those who never experience rejection. They are the ones who refuse to let rejection define their identity. Every interaction in life is simply feedback, never a verdict on your worth. Remember, the world does not reward those who desperately seek validation. It rewards those who know who they are before anyone else tells them. Build your body, strengthen your mind, master your emotions, develop your communication, protect your peace, and create a life so meaningful that your happiness is never dependent on another person's response. When you stop chasing acceptance, you begin attracting genuine respect. When you stop performing, you become authentic. When you stop fearing rejection, you become truly free. One day, you will realize that the most important relationship you ever built was not with someone you approached, it was with yourself. That relationship determines how you speak, how you think, how you lead, how you love, and how you face every challenge life places before you. Master your habits before your words. Master your emotions before your conversations. Master your purpose before your relationships. Because a person who has conquered their own mind walks into every room with a quiet strength that cannot be copied, purchased, or faked. So before you take that first step toward anyone else, take the first step toward becoming the highest version of yourself. Let your confidence come from competence. Let your calm come from self-control. Let your presence come from purpose. And let every conversation be an expression of who you already are, not a search for who you hope to become. The moment you stop looking for someone to complete your life and start building a life that is already complete, you become impossible to shake, impossible to manipulate, and impossible to ignore. That is the real psychology of lasting confidence. That is the mindset that earns respect before a single word is spoken. And that is the kind of strength that stays with you long after every conversation has ended.